Let's get started. What's in the news? Anybody know?
Oh, lots of stuff about North Korea wanting to nuke America.
Yeah.
What? Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
But
Hopefully
they're
not
always
Ohio.
wanting to like nuke America.
Isn't it like China trying to tell them like you can't do that?
Correct. China does not want them to nuke America. One is that they would lose a lot of money if America got nuked. So why would you want to nuke your, exactly. It'd be like, you got a great job, you're making lots and lots of money, and you go up and blow up your building where you work. What are you thinking? Apparently not. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to allow the North Koreans to nuke America. Of course, they did a missile test the other day, and the missile launch failed. Oh, I think, and there might be a video on that one. That might be something fun to look up.
Oh, didn't, what happened?
If that's on.
Didn't America drop their largest?
Yeah, the Moab, mother of all bombs, although that's not really what it's called, but I think that's pretty funny.
I forget, why did they do that?
To take out an Afghan base
Oh,
from the ISIS, out in, ISIS. So the goal was I think they killed like 30 ISIS leaders there, or ISIS members. But the biggest thing was they took out an entire base with this one bomb. So I think there might even be, let's see, North Korea, let's see, what's a, so they had this big military parade. It's like the largest ever cheerleader. It's a nice looking square.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw
They got tanks and everything in there. Oh, and there's their leader. Oh, yeah. Golly, the way they march, it looks like Germany. See, we don't hit days like that and drop the mother of all bombs. I mean, you wipe out an entire country on a day like that, and they wouldn't even know. But they brought in their missiles. It's a huge demonstration. And then I think here's the one where they actually, we don't want a true green story. So it's going to be 30 minutes, 30 seconds long. So while we're listening to an ad that's 30 seconds long, which is annoying. So, of course, North Korea, I guess their missile test failed really bad. 30 blew up seconds after the launch.
Tonight and the other big story we're following, North Korea's show of force failing in spectacular fashion. Tonight, some asking if U.S. hackers disrupted their missile test. That missile exploding seconds after launch.
How do we hack their missile test? They're a closed country. Do they even have computers?
Hours later,
Yeah.
a provocation. A U.S. carrier group making its way to the Korean Peninsula. President Trump had a force of his own. The President's national security advisor warning the U.S. will take action if necessary. Is a North Korean nuclear test still in the works? ABC Chief Global Correspondent Martha Raddatz in Seoul tonight.
I want to see the actual failure.
Report former British cabinet ministers, Korea.
Let's see, and then, oh, here we go.
The looming threat of North Korea's sixth nuclear test and those new missiles displayed over the weekend. The concern North Korea is getting
Oh, there's
closer to
the-
being able to reach the continental United States.
I think they're required to be at the parade.
Pulls the trigger, this would be target number one. Osan Air Base, just 48 miles from North Korea.
What we do here specifically is we are trained day in, day out to be fight tonight ready, as we say.
F-16s are constant patrol, anti-missile batteries primed and ready. We got an exclusive tour. Major Sean Walsh, an F-16 pilot, up in the skies training at least
So,
3 times.
Yeah, I was hoping to actually just see the missile failure.
Look underneath your night vision goggles, you can see.
I wonder if we didn't have, we didn't have Facebook or Instagram or any social media, if our thoughts would be different. Like, if I go on Instagram or Facebook now, it's all like, oh, like, everyone's freaking out about this, but like, when you go out in public, it's completely different.
Right.
Like, if you go, like, past someone on the street, they're not like, you know, like,
Well,
to beat you up kind of thing, and that's only in like the bigger cities, I get that, but like, I don't know.
yeah, Facebook, because of its ability to be anonymous, has a tendency to, people say things that they wouldn't normally say directly to your face.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't want you to hit them. So I wish what they do is to come out with a machine that attaches to your computer, and everybody has to have one, that you could slap somebody if they said something that was really stupid. Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I'd slap a lot, though.
Oh, another thing in the news was the Facebook Live.
Yeah, the Facebook
That
Facebook
blew
killer.
up last night, I had no idea what was going on.
New clues emerge on Facebook killer's
Yeah,
whereabouts.
someone like put a Facebook Live, you know, when you do the Facebook Live thing, and they just shot somebody on Facebook Live, and now
Yeah.
everyone's like freaking out.
He killed a 74-year-old grandfather.
But he's 74.
Yeah.
Not
Not that it'd make it better if he was like 4 years old, but still.
Turn the sound off.
Hi, you say Joy Lane?
Joy Lane.
Yeah. She's the reason why all this might happen to me. How old are you?
Oh, man, look. I don't know about that.
So,
Did he actually shoot?
yeah, he shot, that's the Facebook shooter. He filming it live, he pulls the gun and shoots the guy.
Kind of.
I'm sure
Yep.
Facebook is getting a lot of crap about live stuff now.
Yeah, they pulled it down. They pulled down the guy's Facebook page.
Oh, I
And
meant like
there's
the
a
whole-
manhunt for the guy. His cell phone, get this, the guy is a behavioral health worker. That just, it like blows my mind. In merged Ohio residents in Pennsylvania, New York, Indiana to be on the lookout for Steve Stevens. So he's actually claimed to have killed other people.
He's claiming that?
Yeah, he's claimed to have killed other people.
Wait, he's a what? Like a
A
health?
behavioral health,
Okay, yeah.
I
Worker.
wonder if something
Mentally
happened.
unstable.
Yes. I mean, that's the guy right there.
Isn't he driving?
Wait, where's he-
Ford
where's he
Fusion?
driving?
Yeah, white Ford Fusion. So if you see a white Ford Fusion, be on the lookout for it. Yeah, it's pretty sad that, that he would kill this guy. I mean, I guess they said he had like 10 grandchildren.
That's
The
so
old guy
sad.
did.
The old guy, that's so
Yeah.
sad.
10 grandchildren, a number of kids, 4 or 5 kids, 10
That
grandchildren.
hurts my heart.
Yeah, just walk up and kill
Was it like
some defenseless old guy. What was kind of interesting is the old guy put a plastic bag up to like protect himself. It's like, no. Toss the plastic bag at the guy, because what is the first reaction when somebody throws something at you? You go to catch it, right? And then you grab the gun. Yeah, I know.
Well,
If you can control the gun, you keep it up in the air.
we, as Americans, have to protect ourselves. We do not.
Right.
You know, just like.
I was talking to this old lady once, and, because I was hoping, well, I wasn't like hoping. Anyways, so I was at a nursing home, and I was talking to her, and everyone had like went out of the place, and I was just there, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here in a nursing home, so I'm gonna go talk to the people. And there was this lady, and she was sitting all by herself, like nobody was around her, so I was like, hi, how are you? She's like, I'm good. She was talking, I don't know, she's kind of like mentally unstable, and so I was just asking her some questions, and she said that she was 903.
Wow,
She was married for 74 years.
wow.
And then, you know how usually, like, if you ask an old person, like if you ask someone that's old about their spouse, whatever, they're usually like, oh, you know, when they were younger, like, they were so attractive. Or this lady had a completely different story. She's like, oh, no, he was lazy and he was just not handsome at all. And she was, like, dissing her husband. I was like, poor guy.
Why did you marry him?
Okay, so I was in New Orleans on a mission trip last year, and we went to this nursing home. There's this one old lady. She is the sweetest thing. But we started like talking to her, and I ended up with the whole group of like, there was a lot of people in our group, and we all like were just talking to her. And she said that one of my friends, Luke, was like under her bed, and then when she left, she hit him with her purse. Like she actually whacked him with her purse. Yeah, so crazy. It was kind of funny though.
So anything else in the news? We had the Facebook killer, North Korea,
Where does this guy live so I won't
up in
not-
Cleveland.
What?
Yeah, he lives
Okay.
up in Cleveland.
I'm scared.
Why?
I don't know.
Well, what's the chances of this guy coming across you? 1,000,000 to 1?
No.
Yeah,
He's in Cleveland.
you got a better
2 hours
chance,
away.
you got a better chance of winning the lottery.
Yeah, but it's quite
45 minutes away.
Well, it depends where you go in Cleveland. You know, you could be an active.
Besides, they said he's last time they got a ping off his cell phone, he was in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So he's left the state, which is
Oh.
not surprising.
Thank goodness. Now I can sleep at night.
We're gonna sleep before. It's not a big deal. I mean.
Okay, so
He has a gun.
the Shattered Society, 1963, that's right, that's what we're on, I hope so, that's what I prepared for.
Yeah.
Chapter 24.
Yep.
Which is like, we only have,
6 chapters?
yeah,
Oh, 3 chapters.
yeah, 3 chapters left. Really, 3 chapters left? Ooh.
Wow.
Should skip one.
And by the way, we've got a project.
Oh,
my
yeah,
gosh.
I'm not even know that because
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not
she's
gonna be
leaving.
here
She's already been here about it.
for like 2 weeks.
You're not gonna be here for 2 weeks? What the heck?
No,
I mean, I'm not gonna be like. on
She can't do school
task.
for 2 weeks, but she's gonna miss 1 week of
I'm
class.
so mad about it.
What?
I can't like do school on vacation because my grandparents planned out literally everything. They told us that we have to wear white shirts and khaki pants to take a family photo in, but I'm gonna be like, no, I forgot my khaki pants because I don't have khaki pants. I don't even know
You
where
know
to
what
find
your
them.
grandmother will do for you?
Go on.
Buy you a pair of khaki pants. There you go.
Okay, but you literally, we have kite flying day, we have ornament painting day.
Ornament? Oh, wow.
Wow.
Have fun.
And I can't do school, like I'm stressed out.
Are these your mom or your dad's?
My mom's
So,
side.
yes, the project will be for you guys
It would
to
be
do.
super easy for me because this is the week I'm getting back and that's the last. Like,
I told you to do all your school before you leave, but you.
I can't.
Yes, you can, Tara.
Five-
This is when I get.
Yes, the project will be is a, family tree.
Oh, that's super easy because my dad has the answer.
Oh, yeah, he's like obsessed with it.
Yeah, he's.
Yeah, see, so you guys can
Wait,
sit down.
so does it
So-
have to be like a model or can it just be on paper?
It's just, you draw it out, you can use like
Can we have like
PowerPoint.
graphs about like
Yeah,
our.
or you can draw out a big graph, or you can do like a board. So you can do
Oh,
a board, you can do a graph,
So
you can
it's
do,
literally just family tree and like.
Mhm.
branch off of that.
go back as far as you can.
Johann Sebastian Bach.
My favorite.
And then, what you'll want to do is, I want to know something interesting about your family.
How's it gonna work for me?
Can I tell you right now?
Because
I'm pretty much Irish.
What?
how's it gonna work for me?
My
You
dad.
have
was
to
born
figure
in
it out.
Cause like, that's weird.
No, it's not. You can figure out how you want to do it.
Okay, that's simple. I can
yeah.
do that. I should just ask my grandchild.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
So the final exam for economics. Is that open book?
What, the final exam for economics?
Just because like all the tests kind of.
Well, you have from.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Might even be in class.
No?
An in-class open books.
In class oral open book test.
There you go.
I haven't decided how we're gonna do, economics
Well,
yet.
don't stress me out about it. 'Cause
Oh, it's gonna be the most difficult test you've had all
That-
year.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Do you know, the last time I taught economics, I sent out an email to everybody and said, oh, by the way, there's a test due this week. And everybody's like, oh, you didn't say it's not on the schedule. And I got all these email back, and then I sent a response back. Did anybody check what today's date was? And then they're all like, oh, it was April Fool's Day.
You're so mean.
That's something
Okay, question.
Yes, since you're not gonna be here, what will class be like if you're not here?
I don't know.
Oh my
You guys will have to figure something out.
Yeah, we'll have to figure something out.
Yeah, okay, it was really important. Oh yeah, because, you sent out for the test, like the study guide stuff. One of the, questions said discuss 4 reasons, but on the test it said discuss 5 reasons.
Did it?
Yeah, I don't really remember how many I put down.
Well, I will fix the discrepancy,
Okay,
so
I was really confused. I think I put down 4.
that's okay. I will check that. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so let's get on with the lesson for today. Should be actually fairly quick. One of the things that I don't like about the book is I don't think it gives enough detail into the space race and the things that we accomplished. So I wanted to do a little bit better job of going over some of the things that we accomplished. There were 3 major missions or programs, or in the sense of the first one was Project Mercury, which was to put the first man into space. What was the big thing? Anybody know what the big thing that caused the Americans to panic about the whole space race?
The atmosphere.
Why would the atmosphere
I
make
didn't know.
people panic? The Russians launched a little known thing called, starts with an S.
So.
Sputnik. So it freaked out the United States, because here, all of a sudden, we've been leading in just about everything, and all of a sudden now the Russians are ahead of us in something. We're like, oh no, what the heck are we going to do? So of course, the big plan was to try to put the first man in space. The problem is we did not accomplish that. So Eisenhower is the president who initiated really our move with trying to get somebody into space. He's the one who set the goal. We actually, started in 58, went through 1963. Russian Yuri Gagarin, I Russian names are horrible to say. Gagarin, he becomes the first man to into orbit the Earth in April 12th, 1961. So you can see that our flights, when he does that, we have our first Mercury flights. Freedom 7 was with Alan Shepard. That launches in May 5th of 1961. So we didn't even get a guy off the launch pad until May. We did launch the chimpanzee first and put a chimpanzee into space before we put a man, which was kind of interesting for the astronauts because the astronauts really got ridiculed with by the press for the fact that, well, we put a chimpanzee in space, how bad could it be? You know, or you're just sending up a bunch of men. Well, they're just they're monkeys in this case. So actually the astronauts fought to get windows into the space capsule and actually have some minor controls in there. Because originally what they were going to do is they just wanted to put these guys in a capsule, launch it into space, have it orbit the Earth and come back. Well, they fought to say, no, we're going to do this differently or we're not going to fly. And it's like, so, of course, the leaders of NASA were not too happy. John Glenn becomes the first American to circle, orbit the Earth. He does it 3 times. His duration of his flight is 4 hours and 55 minutes. And each time we get a little bit more longer. Carpenter becomes the second person. He does also 3, but his is a minute longer, his flight time. Not even quite a minute longer, almost like 42 seconds longer. And then the real long flight starts out with Shira. He goes around the orbit 6 times, lasts 9 hours, 13 minutes. I love the fact that they put the speeds up here, how fast they were going. Most of them are all around 17,500 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. Breaking some speed limits up there probably. And then how high they were, 248 miles. That can't be right. The 4.6, it doesn't seem correct. There must be something wrong with the second number. So then let's see. Then Cooper is the longest for a period of time. He flies for 22 orbits. It's up in space for 1 day, 10 hours, 19 minutes before he comes back and lands. And here's what the different rockets look like. You can see the first two rockets are smaller. Why? Because they weren't designed to reach orbit. They're actually based off of the V2 rocket that the Germans were using in World War II. So then the 4 other ones are a little bit bigger. You can see that, and the object of those is to get them into space. If I remember right, I think it was a 2-stage rocket that was really unique. The second stage and the first stage all fired at the same time, but there was a hole through the first stage that the second stage exhaust went through. And then, of course, after Mercury, there's the Gemini program, which lasted in 61 through 66. You can see there's some overlap here. 63 is when the final project for Mercury ends, and 61 is when Gemini actually starts. And actually the Apollo mission actually starts at the same time as the Mercury mission is going on as well. The Apollo mission is 61. Of course, everybody knows of Kennedy asking, basically making a declaration that we would reach the moon by the end of the decade, is what he wanted, set for a goal for NASA. So the Gemini program was 10 missions, and its main goal was really to get ready to go to the moon. So they did a lot of different things to get them ready. One of the most significant is Edward White becomes the first American to make an extravehicular activity, which we call EVA or spacewalk today. And that was on June 3rd, 1965, and that was during Gemini 4. And then Gemini 5, they started looking at some of these different things. Gemini 5 demonstrated 8-day endurance necessary for the Apollo mission. So again, they're looking at what it will take to get to the moon and back, minimum 8 days. Gemini 6A and 7 accomplished the first space rendezvous. Gemini 7 set a 14-day endurance record. Of course, that's nothing these days. What, the space shuttle will go up there for a month at a time, and we got people living in space stations longer than that.
Okay, what's the status of Pluto? Because it keeps going.
Yeah, I think Pluto's back to being a planet again.
What
You know, so I don't know. Who knows?
the heck? Gus would.
Gemini, let's see, Gemini 8 achieved the first space docking with an unmanned Agena target vehicle. Gemini 11 set a manned Earth orbital altitude record of 739 miles. What they used is the Agena vehicle and used its rockets to push itself higher into orbit. And that record, as of when the article that I found, as of 2014, that record still stood. So think about that. Nobody's orbited higher on the Earth than what they did on Gemini 11 in 1966. And then Buzz Aldrin becomes the first guy to, of course, yeah, I think that's who they named him after. Actually becomes the first person to actually work outside in space. So they were afraid that, you know, working in space would be too taxing on an individual. They wouldn't be able to accomplish it. Of course, now you see what some of these people do in space. It's quite amazing. And NASA, anybody seen the movie Gravity?
No.
If you haven't seen the movie Gravity, watch it just from the sense of what they do.
Have you ever seen the movie
in-
Interstellar?
I
Yeah.
love that movie.
But that's not real.
It was.
But it was
It's still
good.
good.
So that's some of the things that Buzz Aldrin did. And then that leads us to, of course, the Apollo program. The object is first, I didn't change it, first man and the moon is the object. Forgot to change that slide. Apollo Flight 1 was actually, there was a fire in the command module. And that killed the 3 astronauts there, Grissom, White, and Chaffee. Because of that, there was an investigation and they found that there were a lot of mistakes NASA made. I just watched the movie Deepwater Horizon. It's based on the true story of the oil spill that happened in 2010. You want to see an interesting,
I always think that 2010 was like,
it is.
like you always have
Well, I
that
remember
related
it.
to this, I go, that's like yesterday. That was 6 years.
I remember 2007.
7 years ago.
That was 7.
7 years.
Yeah, 2007 was 10 years ago.
I just
See,
remember.
this-
that's
and
when
this
we
is
got our
even math class.
extension.
And the 1990s were almost 30 years ago.
1999 was only 18 years ago.
Yeah.
But 1990 was almost 30 years ago.
That's what I'm saying.
I
said 1999.
So because of this, they found, just similar to the, it's interesting because watching that movie the other day and on the Deepwater Horizon, and this, it was, wow, very similarities. Management making decisions that probably shouldn't have been made, not necessarily listening to all the engineers, and mistakes are made and that causes problems, and boom, you end up with a tragedy. In the Deepwater Horizon movie or incident, 11 people died and almost 500 million gallons of oil flow into the Gulf of Mexico, which if you think about that, that's a lot of oil.
I think they have this new like sponge thing that can go in the water and actually just clean up the oil.
Yeah, that there's actually, was very fascinating. I remember when that happened in 2010, Kevin Costner, the actor from Dances with Wolves and Wyatt Earp and a couple other movies. I'm trying to think of theirs. He's done a few recently. But he actually is part owner of a company that goes out and will suck in the oil and the seawater and then remove the oil and flush clean seawater back out. So it's pretty cool. But the government, of course, refused to let him go in and use it, which I found very annoying. Of course, here's the speech of Kennedy to Congress, basically saying we will reach the moon. And so 67 is the first test flight. In October 68, first test of the command module. Grissom was actually part of the Mercury program and one of the original guys there. Shira was part of Mercury flight, and he was part of the test command, one of the Apollo ones that tested the command module. And then, of course, Apollo 8 was the first one to orbit the moon. Lovell was part of that. Anybody see Apollo 13? You guys gotta watch Apollo 13. You gotta watch it. So Lovell is part of that crew that orbits the Earth. Apollo 9, it goes out and tests the lunar module. They didn't actually land on the moon. Apollo 10 continues on, tested the lunar module around the moon. Apollo 11 is Armstrong, Aldrin, Buzz Aldrin, and Collins, who actually land on the moon, and of course Neil Armstrong and his famous, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Do you think he wrote that speech out beforehand or somebody wrote it for him? But he actually sets foot on the moon July 20th, 1969. Any of you alive back then? And so then they land on the moon, do samples, take pictures, and then Apollo 12 is with Conrad, Bean, and Gordon, and they actually land on the moon as well. Then Apollo 13, which is the famous story, as they're on their way to the moon, they actually have a malfunction in the command module, which requires them to move to the lunar module and live in the lunar module for the flight to the moon and back from the moon. They are not able to land, and they actually come back. It's probably, if you watch the movie, they do a great job of simulating what these guys went through and determining what needed to be done to save these guys' lives. Because the lunar module had round air cleaners. The command module had square air cleaners. Guess what? They didn't fit. So they had to engineer a way for the guys with only the stuff that they had up there to make a square peg fit in a round hole.
That's probably my favorite part of that movie.
Yeah.
All that stuff off the table.
And then they had to come up with a way of actually starting up the module, the lunar module, or the command center on the way back, and they weren't even sure that they would be able to get it started when they were doing it. Did you hurt yourself?
No. I got bit by something and it really hurts. Mary got bit in the same place. I think it's a spider because I have 2 legs.
Well,
And it was pressing me off.
sounds really tough.
It is really tough.
Apollo 14, of course. Also, if you watch Apollo 13, the movie, the coverage of the Apollo 13 launch and stuff was not as big of a deal as what they had, with Apollo 11 and Apollo 12. It's now seems like, oh, well, going to the moon, whoop-de-doo, big deal, old news. And so the Apollo 13 crisis actually stirred back up the excitement for the space race. Another great movie, if you want to learn about a science movie, is October Sky. It's based off of a kid who dreams of working at NASA, and he goes and he builds these rockets in high school trying to win a science fair project, him and a friend. And he ends up doing so and getting a job with NASA later in life, but it's his story. It's pretty cool. Then, of course, Apollo 15, it landed on the moon. 14 landed on the moon. As I mentioned, Lovell was actually on 2 flights that orbited the moon, but never landed. And he was scheduled to actually land on the moon. So unfortunately, he never did make it there. Apollo 14, because actually he was scheduled, I think, for Apollo 18, and they scrubbed it after there were going to be no more flights to the moon after that because, oh, well, it had been done. They didn't feel like they could learn anything new. But here's one of the first pictures of Earth looking back from the moon.
It looks so cool.
Mhm. So, yeah, I mean, think about it. The number of people that have actually been out to space and compared to the number of people that have lived on the Earth in history, and so it's really such a small percentage. There's actually, if you go online, you can find a picture of where all of the different ones landed. There's 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17, and of course they stopped after that. And of course, if you watch the movie Transformers, you'll see what really goes on the moon. Just kidding. Or the other one is Independence Day. The new Independence Day was pretty interesting. So this goes on, and like I said, I don't feel like this is a huge important part of history. NASA and the move to the work to go to the moon inspires so much progress here in our country, and actually a lot of the inventions that came out of this flight to the moon and the design is stuff that we use today that we don't even think about. So at the same time, of course, going on, Johnson and the Great Society, you have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, ended unequal application of voter registration requirements and racial segregation in schools, at the workplace, and by facilities that serve the general public. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, and of course Selma, Alabama, which there's a movie about that, Martin Luther King Jr.'s march in Selma, and what happens there. And again, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 prohibits racial discrimination in voting. If you haven't seen it, another great movie I'd recommend is The Free State of Jones. There's a little bit of it's an exaggeration of the history, but it kind of gives you a taste of what some of the African Americans dealt with, blacks at the time, of being discriminated against and actually not even being allowed to vote, the lynchings, the Ku Klux Klan, that great Christian, supposed Christian organization, which we know is not Christian, and what these guys did and how they would just do anything to deny the right to vote to blacks and during that time period. So it takes all the way, think about this, it takes almost 100 years before the discrimination is actually ended that goes on there. In the South, they would actually you would have to have reading tests before you could vote. You would have to do other certain things in order to vote. They would put all these stipulations on you that these guys could not achieve, and just to keep them from voting. It was, it's one of those black marks on American history. And, you know, we talked about how we treated the Native Americans, how we treated blacks, how we treated the Chinese, how we treated the Irish. America is not perfect. It always has a tendency of treating the next people in or people who are different than the base society, treating them poorly. That's not saying all of them did. Or everybody does that, but as a general rule, a lot of people in power. And if you go into the South, there's still a lot of racism in the South even today, which is sad. You have Johnson and the Great Society. You have judicial activism, of course, one man, one vote decisions. He passes Medicare. Probably one of the worst things done is Medicare, and of course George W. Bush expands that later to Medicare Part B, which again was just horrible. Then you have the Roth versus United States, the 6-3 decision written by Justice Brennan. The court held that obscenity was not within the area of constitutionally protected speech or press. The court noted that the First Amendment was not intended to protect every utterance or form of expression, such as materials that were utterly without redeeming social importance. So this really, the court held that such definition of obscenity gave sufficient fair warning and satisfied the demands. So what that was is basically ruling against pornography. Of course, we know how prolific, can't even speak today, how widespread
There you go.
pornography is today, that, even on the internet, you can, it could be in anybody's home. But they ruled back then that that was not considered protected speech. Of course, you have the start of the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, escalation of the American troops in Vietnam, and the Tet Offensive, North Vietnamese offensive in 1968. Utter failure by the North Vietnamese, but was a PR victory, and basically spells the end of the war for the beginning of the end of the war, really, for the United States. Even though we continue to fight it, the political motivation for it goes way down. Great, and again, go back to movies. I love using movies. We Were Soldiers is a great movie on Vietnam. I don't like some of the other remakes of Vietnam, like Platoon or Full Metal Jacket, or some of those movies. One of my favorites probably would be We Were Soldiers, because it gives it from the perspective of actually a colonel there at the time, and what he went through in developing the first air cav unit, which was the first cavalry unit to actually, they fly in and helicopters land, secure an area, and then fight from that area. And we had roughly 350 of our U.S. troops versus thousands of the Viet Cong troops there, and end up having actually a decisive victory there, which was good and bad, because of the fact that it was a decisive victory for us. It encouraged us more into the war. Had maybe we lost, we might not have gotten as involved in the war. So, again, great movie. If you get a chance, I would watch it. Again, continue on with Johnson in Vietnam. Disaffected youth in 1960s, early 70s, the anti-war movement, rallying point, hippie movement, and of course has a huge impact here in Northeast Ohio. Where was the impact here in Northeast Ohio for the anti-war movement? Well, you guys should know what happened. It's celebrated every year here in a small little college just north of, yeah, thank you. Yes, the Kent shootings, where 4 students were shot and killed. Yes.
My old pastor, he, like, when he was going to school there, like, he was there the day that, like, all the shooting happened. And apparently, like, one of his friends, like, was shot and killed there. And he, like, always talks about it.
That shooting still haunts Kent State. There was somebody I was talking to the other day about the shooting. He was actually went to school there, and he said, yeah, it still has an impact on the psyche of the school. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting considering it's, what, 40, 50 years ago? But it still has, they've almost accepted it as their identity. Of course, when you don't win national championships or do well in basketball and football, you know, you're bound to have identity in something else. So, at Purdue, it's engineering. At Akron U, I don't know, but what is Akron U's identity?
They're pretty good at soccer.
That's true, they did win a national championship in soccer, I forgot about that.
Their like players go pro and stuff.
Yep.
So that's pretty.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That's something to hang your hat on, is the soccer team there. That's a good one. Glad you remember that, Caleb.
The only reason I know is because my cousin like went there, now he like is sort of pro.
Now, did they win 1 or 2 times? I know they won and then
I
they
think it
defended
was-
their title, but I can't
I think
remember
it
if
was
they
2.
won.
I think it was
It might have been,
because they won.
I don't remember either. Of course, you know, the hippie movement too goes along with free love. You know, love is free, and
I have some stories today. Okay, so at my brother's coffee shop, he always, every Thursday, he has someone play there. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's this guy, and he's like a total hippie, and it's so, like, I think it's funny. It's really mean, but I think it's funny. It's hilarious, because he, like, walks in, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's awful. He wears the weirdest clothes, and he's, like, always barefoot, and he's like,
Yeah.
hey, how I can't even do it. He's, like, so chill. Like,
did you
won't
ask
be-
him where he gets his marijuana from?
No. But he's so funny. Like, I was working there one day and he didn't get coffee. He's like, oh no, I don't drink coffee. I just drink like a specific like herbal tea. And I was like, okay, you know, like it was so weird, but it's
Yeah.
funny because then like he plays all these chill songs. Like I don't think he knows how to yell. It's just very interesting. It's weird.
Yeah, it's an interesting movement. The election of 1968, of course, Johnson bows out of the election, doesn't rerun, mainly because he knows that he is not going to win. And, you know, we didn't talk much about the Kennedy assassination. We could do that some other time if you guys wanted. Nixon and the silent majority. New economic policy, was it really? No, not really. It was the same old New Deal stuff. Really, you see from FDR on, both parties, both Republicans and Democrats, none of them are really about making government smaller. Up until this time, Coolidge is probably the last president who actually believes in smaller government. After that, you end up with Harding, big government. FDR, big government. Truman, big government. Eisenhower expands, you know, increases the minimum wage. You can see how he increased this progressive movement idea. So again, another big government. Then you have Kennedy. Kennedy might have been somewhat of a small government kind of guy, but not so much in the same venture as, say, a Coolidge or a Reagan. But remember when I tell you that a lot of Reagan's ideas come from Kennedy, and a lot of Kennedy's ideas came from Coolidge and Harding. Especially the idea of smaller government, cutting spending, cutting taxes. Those kind of ideas are actually from Harding and continued on through Kennedy. If during this time period, when we get towards looking at Reagan in a couple of chapters, Reagan actually was a Democrat during Kennedy. But when Johnson comes along and becomes president and starts becoming the much bigger, the great society kind of guy, developing this, Reagan and many staunch Republicans leave the party. So, and of course, one of those is Reagan, who becomes one of our great presidents of the 1900s. Don't let anybody fool you. Everybody always talks about, well, Reagan, he raised the deficit so high, it was horrible. Yes, he won the war against the Soviet Union. He won the Cold War. He also had the longest period of economic growth in the history of the United States without a war. Normally, most of the time, these long economic successes are because of a war, or after a war, or because of a war. He did not do that. So you have the one thing that Nixon did well was he was a great diplomat, especially with China, and starts normalizing some of our relationships with China that weren't there before. So this is a great benefit for him. So that's pretty much it for today, unless you guys have questions for me.
Since we don't start a debate today, I'm good.
Well, it's really hard to have a debate when there's only 4 of you.
No.
Put the other 3 against you.
I don't know, but Devin volunteered, so I. Is this mine? No.
Okay,
No.
so we're a minute early, so you guys got actually 15, 16 minutes before next class.
Come on, I don't.
Okay.
What? I didn't bring my. You just let it things.